And right now it's time for that time when we have our special guest. We welcome Winston Peters as our special guest on The Beat Goes On. Winston Peters, wonderful to have you on The Beat Goes On.
Thank you very much.
We won!
Yes,
we won!
and not before time.
Now, you're a rugby man, aren't you, Winston?
Yeah, I'm a keen rugby follower, player in the old days.
And what do you think about winning? I know we can't get too excited because we've got politics to talk about, but just let's spend a minute on the fact that we've won the World Cup again. Isn't that wonderful?
Well, preparation and brain power goes a long way in any contact sport, even boxing, as Muhammad Ali proved, and it certainly works in rugby.
Yeah. So where were you when you saw this wonderful game? Were you at the game or did you watch it on television?
I got to share the concern of most New Zealanders. Not for that price I wasn't at the game, no. I watched it like at home, like with friends like everybody else.
Yeah. Well, we can't talk about rugby anymore, Winston. We must get to the subject at hand, and of course it's politics. 26th of November. Comes up so quick, doesn't it? Let's go back to the last election, 2008. You watched the results came in and you nearly made it. 4.76% of the party vote. That just wasn't enough. What did you feel that night?
Well, we had been dealt almost 6 months of character assassination and all sorts of lies and innuendo perpetrated by someone who's no longer going to be in politics. We all know who he is, and the media went for it as well. And when the inquiries were all over, they had nothing of evidence whatsoever. But that's the way it was designed. Even despite that, we just about made it. But that was yesterday.
Yeah,
2011.
So you've had
November something else.
What did you do in those 3 years? Are we allowed to know, or is it very
Well, I
private?
decided I have my life back on election night. I thought, well, there's one great thing here. I've got my life back that I have not had for many years, and I will do some of the things I used to do when I was very young. And
fishing,
horse riding.
Yeah.
You know, mucking around in the water. I loved it, those sorts of things, and going, flounder fishing and netting and diving. It's just a marvellous part of being a New Zealander, and so I did a lot of that, and I decided to work considerable time on my own business and ensure that that tricked along, and also I kept on the road pretty extensively around this country, keeping the party and its organisation alive and together, because you've got to have someone fronting it, and we've kept ourselves prepared for this day, for this campaign, and we're ready to go.
What are we going to do different this time?
Well, every election is different and the issues are different, excepting I have to say that for now decades there were things in our economy and in our social life which were never going to survive, successfully that is, and that there will always be a day of reckoning. It's arrived. Those things are, the integrity of capitalism has been seriously lost. You see the stuff on Wall Street.
Yeah,
and
Occupy Wall Street?
Well, before that, the corruption, the greed, the insatiable political influence to change things to suit the few and the very few.
The 1%.
Almost the 1%.
Yeah.
You know, this was always inevitable. And at the same time, there was a, how shall I say it, the welfare state lost a degree of integrity as well. These two enduring institutions, which we once had at its greatest measure, one of the most successful economies, delivering the most even-handed, egalitarian result of equality and fairness to people, that was lost over these decades. This is just part of it. And so I watched and thought, you know, this is going to come to an end. I'm not saying it now because it has. I've said it for a long time, but no one likes to have someone say, I told you so. But I did, you know. Yeah. When I was doing the BNZ and the wine box and the rip-offs that were coming from certain business sectors, the overseas bank ownership that meant they gouged New Zealand and made huge profits here, telecom, one after the other. And the sad thing was that those businesses were able to persuade enough other people in New Zealand that this was all good for them. I mean, how do you have a telephone like that charging 3 times what somebody up in the highlands of PNG gets charged? They're third world, we're first world. But they said it was good business. It wasn't good for New Zealand business, it wasn't good for New Zealand householders. And I can give you countless examples of that. The day of reckoning has arrived, though. That's what this election's about. This election is about a thing called fairness. Whether you and I and the people of this country in enough numbers believe in it anymore. That's not anti-business. That's not anti-worker. It means we're all in together to create a better society. Who for? For all of us.
I feel that this recession seems to be lingering on. We should have got over it by now. So something's happening in the background, and I think that's what everybody feels.
Well, we failed to take the measures that some of us have argued for a long time. Singapore, Norway, just two examples. Along comes this global financial crisis. They barely blinked. Why? Because their economies run soundly. Ours was always under terrible threat from such an occasion because we had made no preparation, like savings, like investing in our own country, like freeing ourselves from foreign money. All those things did not happen. In fact, the very reverse happened. And worst of all, we started selling, as you recall, Labour back in the 1980s and then National, wholesale sell-off of our assets, so that no matter how hard you work, so much of your profit, which should be spent in this country, recycled in this country, is going offshore, and it's billions. It's actually very indescribable because no one is quantifying the full measure of it. But people back home know that their lives are not getting better and that their chance of improving looks very, very, very risky at this point in time. That's why their young people are heading off overseas to make a life, to get a job in some other country.
You're constantly talking to people. Oh, there's Winston. I'll go out and have a word to him. What are you hearing from people? What's their major fear at the moment?
I think it's an insecurity and concern. It's the cost of trying to keep their families. If I talk to the very wealthy, it's different. All they're interested in, many of them,
is making more money.
Is making more money. You know, I mean, last year, the rich list improved their wealth by 20%. In the UK, by 30%. In the USA, that 1%, increased their wealth hugely. Everybody else went down. But you see, if you've got control of the levers, and often many of the mechanisms by which you persuade people, the media, print, and often television, you can fool people for so long. But I think the days of fooling them are over now. What do people tell me most of the time? I think they're sharing their concerns about the lack of hope and the lack of real promise or measurements by which they can see themselves, if they work hard, get
some results or
get some results, and for their family. Most people actually are more concerned not just for themselves, but for the ones close to them, family, grandmother, grandfather. That's what they worry about in the big picture of things.
Now, Winston, let's say everything went well and you're in Parliament, you've got 10 seats, and let's have a list of priorities. 10 more, and you had a list of priorities. Let's just say 5. What would the top 5 priorities be that you would like to see change? Number 1.
Well, first of all, the economy sounds boring, but I'm afraid it affects you 24/7, even when you're asleep. So we better pay attention, and first thing we need to do about that is properly construct the kind of economy in which New Zealanders can be tremendously successful, and it's not an experiment. We led the world for 2 great periods in the past doing just that. We forgot the plot, or rather, some bright white boys came along and said, "We've got a better plot for you, you'll love this." But we didn't. The second thing is, you'll never progress as a country unless you have a set of shared values and objectives. So you can't have all this separatist law, different pathways, everyone fighting over a diminishing pie. We must have an agreement across the political divide that some things are fundamental, and fairness is one of those. So you run a fair economy and you run a fair social system as well. The third thing is, we have never, and we're never going to in the future, had a chance unless we skilled and trained to the first world best standards our young people on whose back we all depend for the next 30, 40, 50 years. So why would you put out inferior human capital when you can have the best?
Yes.
So educational investment and training and upskilling and employing them in your economy is the third thing that I think is very, very critical. Now, the fourth one is, you cannot give people those things with a chance of retaining them in a happy life if we can't guarantee their personal security on the streets, in our homes. And for a country with so much so blessed by a beautiful climate, space and room, water coming out of our ears when most of the world is starving for it or thirsting for it, Our crime is way above what it should be. So things have gone dramatically wrong then there. And we have to buy a better policing system, when I say more people to ensure that the laws are upheld, that has to happen. But the home and the school must back that up. You cannot allow children to have, and young people have a contempt for authority without one day it comes to bite all of us, and at we know where. Right? So that needs to be done.
Yeah.
The foreshore and seabed should be owned by all of us. It is not now going to be owned by all of us, and that separatism, whether you're Maori or European, is destructive in the long term. It'll set Maori against Maori as much as against Maoris against European or the rest of society. There's 5 for a start.
Yes, well, I mean, you can go on, couldn't it?
But the big issue is fairness.
Now, what about immigration? Are you still hot on that? That was once
Well,
one of
I've always
your,
been hot on immigration, and all around the world they're hot on it. Every country I go to, India, China, Japan, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, they're all hot on immigration because they all believe, as I believe, that immigration should be serving the country that is bringing people in, the economic and social interests. So if you've got a shortage of scientists, educationists, specialist people, and you can't make them up in the speed you need them, well, you get them from abroad. But you don't set a target of, say, 50,000 a year and say, no matter what happens, we'll bring them in. How do you account for this target right now when you've got zero growth and unemployment is taking off, and the number of unemployed youth is a disgrace? How do you justify such an immigration policy? Any smart political system would adjust its immigration policy to fit the economic circumstances. Not here. I'll tell you why they don't do it. Because we would have massive reduction in population as a consequence of running a failed economy. So you disguise that by bringing in more mouths, more consumers.
It makes it look as though you're successful.
It makes it look like you're successful. So consumerism is driving the economy, not production.
Yeah.
Now, you know, as I say to some of my people in the party who are from China, from India, we've got Chinese candidate, we've got an Indian candidate and others, and I say to them, tell me, what would your leader, if you were back home, think of this policy we've got? And they don't think of it, they think it's a joke. That's the truth.
Yeah.
So, of course, immigration is important, but to turn it into some sort of argument that you're being racist is the height of intellectual stupidity.
You can never have a proper discussion about it.
Yeah, every other country does one, but not us.
I happen to be a supporter of MMP. What's your feelings of MMP?
Well,
would you retain?
Again, it's about fairness. If you think it's fair for 39% of the voters to run the country through one party, which is what has happened in the past, figures like that, then you'll go for first past the post. But if you don't think that's fair, then MMP is the best answer that I've seen, having extensively travelled throughout the world and seen systems.
Now, we've run out of time. New Zealand first. Do you have a candidate in every seat throughout New Zealand?
No, we had a huge number of nominations, but in the end you choose those that you are prepared to stand by and are prepared to stand by you as a party.
And then, of course, you've got your list as well.
And then, of course, but the critical vote for us is the second vote. That's the party vote. Right. And everyone gets 2 votes for the local person or the party they want nationwide to have an influence. And we've said to people, buy some insurance. You've seen all the rest. They now believe in savings. They didn't when I went out to the country with the referendum. They now believe we should stop state asset sales. They sold billions of them when I was complaining about that. I mean, I'm saying buy some insurance in this campaign. Give your second vote to New Zealand first. And when we win, you win.
That's great.
You're welcome.
Best of luck. Best of luck, Winston.